Charting Toward Intimacy covers mature topics. Listener discretion is advised. Charting Toward Intimacy covers mature topics. Listener discretion is advised. Hey there, welcome to Charting Toward Intimacy, where we're expanding the natural family planning conversation. I'm your host, Ellen Holloway. This episode is part 2 of our Discerning Methods episodes. The episode was split into so that it would be in a little bit more digestible chunks. So we are jumping right back in to our conversation with Ellen Mitchell. If you missed part 1, go back and listen to part 1 first, and then part 2 will make a little bit more sense. All right. Question number 6. Is your schedule similar day to day or different daily? And so I think this really applies specifically to symptothermal methods.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So symptothermal methods require a daily temperature reading of your waking temperature. And the best way to get that is if you have a typical schedule, and you are getting at least like 4 hours of sleep before roughly the same time every morning, getting up and being able to read your temperature. There are protocols within symptothermal methods for people on shift work, but from my experience, symptothermal works the best if you have a typical day-to-day schedule that's about the same. And if you don't, I personally would really suggest you look into a different method than a symptothermal method. There's my soapbox.
I would say that's the method that has the biggest caveat of there's got to be this consistent time where something needs to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Because every other method, really, you're going to be monitoring throughout the day and then making a decision at night about what you have seen all day. So what you're going to chart at night is based on the observations that you made throughout the day. So pretty much any other method, really, that's more what you'll be doing.
Right. And I believe symptohormonal methods, you kind of have a specific time of day that you do check your urine.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not based on how much sleep you got. Because the basal body temperature reading that you're getting is essentially kind of your resting temperature. It's kind of like if you were testing your resting heart rate. If you have gotten up and moved around and then you're testing your temperature, your internal body temperature has risen some amount of degrees. And while it may have only risen, 0.5 degrees, well, the difference that you're looking for in a symptothermal method is 0.4. So you're looking for a temperature rise of about 0.4 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, again, that there's very specific protocols and things like that. Don't go off of that to start charting. Learn from an instructor, please. But you're looking for very small changes in that basal body temperature. And so it's important that that reading be as accurate as you can make it. And there's really cool, there's like tech, like temp drop where you just like wear a thermometer all night. That'll give you like your basal body temperature, which that's cool. I've never used it, but that sounds awesome. Or the traditional way is just as soon as you wake up, reading your temperature. So that's why that specific method kind of has that caveat to it. All right. The next question, how do you feel about using technology with a fertility awareness based method? So some methods, as we've talked about, rely on personal observations of biomarkers throughout your cycle. Some rely on a monitor or a thermometer to give additional objective data. Some are a combination of those. So what kind of is your level of trust in technology? What's your level of trust in your ability to use technology? That's a really good question to ask yourself.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side of that, what is your level of trust in relying on yourself observing your signs? Do you want the backup of really objective data sitting there going, here's what your LH test said.
Yeah. And so I think, if you are feeling uncertain about trusting yourself to keep to a schedule, being able to accurately chart, not missing observations, doing the same thing every day. Sometimes, people want to start with like Boston crosscheck, where they're checking everything. They've been educated on checking all of it. And then you go, okay, well, I'm gaining some confidence. I feel like I could, maybe lose making this observation every day and just stick to these. Having an education in more than one way of monitoring your fertility can be really nice. So even if there's like an overload when you do some of these methods that have a cross check, it's like if you want to then remove pieces of this, you're still using NFP. I would say the only thing here is some people like to do everything at once. They're really interested in the femtech and incorporating technology into their NFP. But I would say you still have to, with an instructor, make a decision about what rules you're going to apply. So for example, the Clear Blue monitor and say Creighton define the fertile window very differently.
Right.
And you can, if you're just curious, if you really like this stuff, or if you just want that double check, can you use them together? Yes. But I would say you're going to need to apply the fertile day rules of Creighton to the monitor. And some of the language sometimes is the same, so the monitor will tell you when you're having a peak reading, it'll tell you peak. And in Creighton, we use the word peak. But when we use the word peak and when the monitor uses the word peak are at different times. So right. All this to say, if you would like to sort of layer these different ways of monitoring your fertility, choose a method that has integrated the technology with the charting rules.
Yes.
So don't sort of just, make a mismatch of your own to try to, try to just have as much data as possible, because, we don't want people to feel now just confused and lost because there's too much information and it's not overlapping in the way they are expecting it to.
Right. Well, this brings up a really interesting conundrum that I saw kind of going around social media a couple of weeks ago. And it was talking about making sure your instructor is right for you. And one of the questions that was suggested to ask was, is your instructor willing to allow you to bring in, additional data into it? Mm-hmm. Here's the thing. It depends on the method. I, as a symptothermal instructor, I can't help you with LH test strips because I do not know how they work. And there is no protocol and no rules in the method that I can teach you that has anything to do with testing the luteinizing hormone. And so while sure, you could add that in just to see.
Right. It's your chart. You could write
go for it. You can write it in. That's totally fine. But I cannot help you put that information into practice. You would need a different method to do that. And the same would go for a mucus only method. If you came to, Ellen number 2 over here and said, hey, I want you to teach me Creighton, but I also want to use the thermometer. It's like, well, you can use that and you can have that data, but your calculations and your rules are going to be based on what Ellen can teach you, because that is the method that she can reliably teach you and has been instructed in teaching you. If she was going to allow you to start using a rule with a thermometer, for example, there would be no, basically your efficacy rate would be 0 because she doesn't have instruction in doing that. And the same would go for if I was going to try to add rules in for a client who was using LH strips, the efficacy rate would go to 0 because I do not have any training in that. So just know that it's an instructor might encourage you. If somebody wanted to use LH strips, go for it. I think that information is totally interesting. I don't know how it works. I don't know how it would work in rules. Mm-hmm. I can't help you there because that's not what I've been trained to do. And it's important to me as an instructor, and it's important to every instructor, that you as a client understand the rules of the method, because those rules of the method are what produce the efficacy rate that we are essentially promoting, for lack of a better term.
And I think it brings up to the point of, what is the goal here? The goal is not for the instructor to feel like I stayed in my lane, I did the right thing. The goal is for the client to reliably be able to use this information to gain insight into her fertility and to make decisions proactively as the couple sees fit around growing or not growing their family at any given time. And so if you really want to be able to use a method that you can trust and feel good about and feel confident in, no matter what your goal is, when your goal changes, when you're postpartum, when, any of these times when, your fertility isn't static. So when, you want to be able to know that what you're doing is going to help you reach your goal. Mm-hmm. And so that's why we just don't want to confound these systems. It's right. Not that, you added this and now it doesn't work because, that monitor doesn't work. It's not about, whether or not these methods work, because we know that they all do. It's just that we need to figure out how to consistently apply them to your life to help you reach what you would like to get out of charting.
Absolutely. Well, and it's, instructors go through months, years of training. They look at hundreds, maybe thousands of, practice charts in our specific method. And so we are highly trained in, again, our specific method and the rules of our specific method. And so I wouldn't feel comfortable, even if I knew another method, I wouldn't feel comfortable applying the rules of a different method if I'm teaching a client how to use, the symptothermal method, simply just because, again, I'm not trained in that. And we talked about, 10 minutes ago, that it's important to learn from a trained instructor. And so again, we just don't want to confound the data. We don't want to confuse anybody. So that's an important, I think, note to kind of make, mm-hmm. is that, your instructor, depending on the method, isn't going to necessarily encourage you to add in additional cross checks that they're not trained in, because we don't want to confuse you.
And another thing here is, I think it's okay to ask your instructor why some of the rules are the way that they are. Why are we doing this? Why am I counting 3? Why am I not checking for cervical mucus internally? I think a lot of the time, we don't ask, and we think, I'm not liking that I can't do this. I would like some more freedom. I want to add something else in. But it's like, if you feel comfortable simply asking why the method works the way it does, why it's structured the way it is, I think you're a lot more comfortable. If I know why I'm doing something, I'm way more likely to be like, okay, I get what's going on. I'm far more comfortable now. I trust this more. It's okay to ask. I mean, there is an answer. There's a reason. None of this is arbitrary.
Exactly.
NLP methods are not trying to rule your life and, just be in charge of you and everything that you do. It's really, all of it comes from somewhere. There's a reason for every instruction, and yes. You can know it. It's for you to know.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Awesome. Okay. So the last question we have, and I'm going to throw us a little curveball here because I'm going to add to this question. Okay. So we talked just briefly about this when we talked about the first question, but what is your short-term goal? But then also I kind of want to add into this question, like, where are you at in your reproductive life right now? So I think that's kind of where this question is going to.
Yes.
Because there's a couple of different places you could be. You could be before you're married, and you want to start learning now because you're interested in what's going on. You could be before you're married and you want to learn a method because you're concerned about something, or you want to seek medical attention for irregular cycles or abnormal pain or many other possibilities. You could be getting ready to get married in a couple of months or a couple of years. You could be married and trying to avoid. You could be married and trying to achieve and having difficulty achieving. You could be postpartum. You could be perimenopause. There's many other spots that you could be, but I think those are kind of your big couple of places that you could be, which would really potentially change what kind of method you want to look into.
Yeah, I think I would have different advice for all of these hypothetical women and
right?
all of these different hypothetical situations.
Should we just go through these hypothetical situations? And
sure, yeah.
Okay, all right. So let's go back to it's before you're married. Maybe you're not even in a relationship at all, but you just are interested in learning some information, starting to chart, and maybe you're not even sure if you want to learn a formal method. Or if you just kind of want to learn a little bit of info. What kind of advice would you give this woman?
I would say to this woman, take an introductory course in the method that is the most accessible to you. Whether it be you have a friend who's using a certain method, maybe you'll just want to, do what she has. Maybe, your parish is offering a course in a certain one. Try that one, because I think in terms of like foundational knowledge of your fertility, any of these methods will give you that.
Yes.
So start somewhere. So where, just whatever is most accessible to you. If you know someone who's a practitioner, you have a friend who charts with a certain method. I say go with that. Use your network. What's most accessible to you? Start there.
Yeah, because again, at this point in your life, it doesn't really matter if you have the exact perfect method for you. You're looking for information. You're looking to just kind of start learning about it. And who knows, that method might work really great for your life, or maybe it doesn't. And that's good information for later down the road. When you want to kind of learn more in depth or take a full course beyond an intro course. I think that's great. That's perfect advice. All right. So the next woman, who I kind of feel like we talked about this one already. So is someone who is specifically looking to address cycle issues. So either abnormal length, abnormal pain, just maybe having no mucus at all, having mucus all the time, things like that. I think really specifically the advice for that woman would be to go to a method that has a medical management component to it. And so again, that would be either Creighton, which has the NAPRO side, the NAPRO arm attached to it. And then Fem has Fem Health attached to it. All right. The next woman is getting married in like 6 months to 12 months. I don't know, something along those lines. What advice would you give her?
Okay. So I think there is a lot of anxiety around how soon can I start charting? So pretty much all of these methods, I mean, I don't know if you can think of an exception, but I can't. Really, after an introductory course of some type, you can start charting in a given method right after.
Right.
So that's, soon after you initiate wanting to learn a method of natural family planning, you will be charting. So that's important, because that, I think, is sometimes the first question of, do I have to take classes before I start? What do I do?
Right.
So there's that. Second, what is your short-term goal once you're married? So if you already have some concerns in this area, I think, again, the answer is, all right, well, something with some medical management, FEM, Creighton. If you don't have any concerns in this area, I think it's kind of wide open for, again, maybe what's most accessible to you, what you feel like might work for you.
Right. Run through the questions that we just did.
Yeah.
Think about those, what's going to fit best for you. Yeah. I think something important to note is that basically every method is going to have a period of time where you are abstaining when you're first learning. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be, again, depending on the method, anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks. Also kind of dependent on the coin flip of like when you start the class and where you are at in your cycle. Yeah. And there's like not much you can do about that one, but yeah, I've definitely had the situation where the 2 weeks that I asked a client to abstain at the very beginning was like, they had likely just ovulated, and I just had them abstain during the 2 weeks of their completely infertile time. And now another cycle started.
Yep. I've had couples just be like, oh, not right now. No, I didn't think like we have to do it right now. I have to start now.
Start right now.
We had plans. Yeah, so we're going on a trip.
That's important to note, is that you're basically, unless you're trying to achieve a pregnancy immediately. And even then, depending on the method, they may ask you to abstain for a little while to just be able to really be able to read your mucus sign properly. Because, well, I'm not going to get too deep into this, but mucus and seminal fluid look very similar.
Yes. And we're sort of touching on this again. And I would just say, it's okay to ask why your instructor is asking you to do this. I think a lot of times, if we just understand why we're being asked to do something, it's like, oh, you know what? That's compelling. I agree that would be valuable. Okay. Like, I'm game.
I understand.
So yes, going in, you're probably going to need to abstain for a certain amount of time, weeks.
Yeah.
Number of weeks.
It's not,
there will be a reason why.
Yeah. It's not going to be like, you're going to abstain for 6 months of learning or something like that. That's not the case. No. And I would say the majority of the time it's maybe 2 to 3 weeks for my clients. I said 2 to 6 weeks because, there are certain cases where it just takes a little bit longer to kind of establish your cycle and find an ovulation that happens. And also that again depends on how long your cycle is too. But wow, okay, we're like getting way, way deep into that. But anyway, just know whenever you start to learn learn any kind of method, you are going to need to abstain for a certain amount of time at the beginning of learning. Okay. Anything else on kind of the woman who's just about to get married, who's preparing for marriage? Start early. The second you get engaged, the better. Actually, like the second that you're like, I'm pretty sure this guy's the one and I think we're going to get engaged, go sign up for an NFP class then. Like right then.
Yeah. And the thing is too, there are so many reasons to do this before you're even engaged. It's so valuable, even outside of marriage. It's still such valuable information. There's really no reason why an 18-year-old single woman wouldn't want to chart.
Absolutely.
So don't wait for your wedding to start.
Yeah.
You'll be glad that you've been charting, if you start earlier.
Right. And it just kind of helps, because basically what happens while you're learning, and as we've kind of talked about in this podcast before, but your basic fertility cycle is going to start with again, this is a typical cycle. It's going to start with some amount of time of relative infertility. It's going to have a fertile window, and then it's going to close out with a completely infertile time, a time when it's like literally impossible because ovulation has already occurred. And when you're learning, it's usually really easy to find the completely infertile time first. And then it takes more instruction and more knowledge to be able to confidently observe that early cycle infertile time. And so, yeah, so if you're getting married in 12 months and you start learning NFP right away and you start learning a method of fertility awareness, and so you take that time to really start feeling confident, you're going to have the most available days when you get married because you have been learning and are so confident in being able to assess those different infertile periods that you have. Awesome. All right. The next woman that I mentioned was postpartum.
Oh, this is a good one. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
What's your advice?
So I think so if you've been charting, particularly if you used a given method to conceive, a lot of women who have been charting up to this point are going to at least attempt to utilize the method that they were using at conception postpartum. The postpartum period looks very different for every woman. So,
and it can look different for every baby.
Yes. So I would say for most women, they're going to at least attempt to return to what they were doing. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it is fine. Sometimes it works great. For some women, it's giving them a lot of anxiety. Either you're seeing mucus all the time, or your sleep schedule's really off, the temps are all over. That is normally when you'd want to make a switch. Mm-hmm. Or either switch between, not using a method that uses basal body temperature anymore, or moving away from relying on the mucus sign, or switching to a method that gives you some cross checks. I think cross checks can be really useful there.
Right. And we talked about this in the symptohormonal method just briefly, that it is very common for a woman postpartum to switch to a symptohormonal method, mm-hmm. Simply because of the really objective data that the monitor or the LH test strips can give you. And that's not to say that every postpartum woman needs to switch to a symptohormonal method. That's not at all the case. Every single method has a postpartum protocol.
Yes. That's an important point.
And you can use any of the methods that I can confidently say that for all of the ones that we talked about in the past 3 episodes.
Yes.
I guess I don't know anything out beyond those, but you can use any of those methods postpartum, and they all have, and many of them have a specific class that you would take while you're pregnant to prepare for that postpartum time, because the protocols are different. For a symptothermal method, until you're cycling, the method essentially turns into a mucus only method. That's a completely different protocol than the symptothermal method. There isn't a cross check. And the protocols actually end up being very similar to Creighton protocols. Mm-hmm. Whereas with like symptohormonal, the protocols change quite a bit, because when you're cycling, you would test a certain couple of days. When you're postpartum, you're not cycling. And so you can't test on cycle day 5 or cycle day 10. You essentially have a different protocol, and that's set up for you with your instructor. So it's just important to know that you don't have to switch postpartum. And every method has a protocol for that. But if it's not working for you, if you have 30 days straight of mucus, mm-hmm. and it all looks, again, there's different terminology depending on the method. If it all looks egg white, or it all looks peak type, or it mm-hmm. all looks fertile type, whatever your terminology is, and it's just not readable, well, it might be a great option. It might be a great time for you to switch to a different method, and not rely on the mucus sign quite as much. Anything else on postpartum?
Yeah, just importantly, as you mentioned, every one of these methods does have a protocol for use of the method postpartum. So this is, just another one of those situations where it's okay to switch. It's okay to feel like something isn't working for you. It's okay. Your fertility is not static. You chemically are a different woman this week than you were last week.
Yep.
So the idea that something is even going to work for you 9 months from now, I mean, not that it's constantly in flux and we can't figure anything out, but it's okay, to move on to something else that is going to work for you better in another phase of your life.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and it's completely okay to say switch to a symptohormonal method during the time that you're not cycling postpartum. And then if you really like your mucus only method, or you really like your symptothermal method that you've been using, once you start cycling again, switch back. Yeah. That's totally fine.
Yeah. I think, it's about you. It's not about how your practitioner feels. It's not about, what your doctor thinks. It's about you and what you need.
Right. And your instructor is not going to be offended. Well, I hope your instructor is not going to be offended if you switch to a different method because the method that they taught you isn't working. And your instructor shouldn't be offended. If they are, then you should switch instructors anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another reason to switch.
Yeah, that seems like a great reason to switch methods. But really, I think something that many instructors can appreciate, and I hope one day all instructors can appreciate, is that these methods are different, and they're going to fit different people at different times. And that's one of the things I love the most about fertility awareness and using it within NFP, is that it can be designed perfectly for each woman. And it can be designed for each phase of your life. All right. The last woman that I suggested is a woman entering perimenopause or premenopause. For a lot of methods, this is defined by age, or certain cycling characteristics. So it's like, I don't even remember, like if you're over a certain age, you just automatically are categorized into a perimenopause category. And then if certain cycling characteristics start appearing, then you're going to be kind of in that. And so essentially what that period of time is your body is kind of shutting down a little bit. It's shutting its fertility cycle down. And so sometimes your cycle, you might ovulate super early in a cycle, and then you might have a really long cycle. And so there isn't kind of the comfortability of the typical cycling that you see throughout the majority of your kind of fertile life. You're seeing a lot more variability in cycles, I would say.
Yeah, so I think this time of life is marked by this sort of unpredictability. And that's why, the key in that perimenopausal time is going to be about being able to pinpoint ovulation, which really is the name of the game for NFP throughout your earlier years of fertility. We are looking to identify when you are fertile. And we're going to be taking that same approach as you enter menopause. So, I think for a lot of women, whatever the method that they were using translates well to this time of unpredictability.
Right.
Just because, your goal is still the same. The main focus of your charting will simply be, can I identify when I am fertile?
Right. And I would actually go as far, and again, this is my personal opinion, but this would not be a time to switch methods. Because
that's a good point.
It is a variable time of your cycle. And so it would be incredibly hard to learn a new method at this time. And so sticking with a method that you already know, can help a lot. And the question might come up, well, would a different method give me, more fertile days. I don't know, maybe. But the thing is, the perimenopause time is a pretty difficult time to chart through. I mean, I've never experienced it personally. I'm not even 30 yet, but with clients, it is a difficult time to chart through, kind of like postpartum can be really difficult to chart through. And so there are going to be extended periods of abstinence during that time, just because of the nature of the way that your body is working. And so if you're feeling like, wow, I'm just abstaining for a long time, maybe a different method would give me more available days. I think in a lot of other cases, that would be a time to look into other methods, but probably not during perimenopause.
Right. So what we're seeing in that period of life is an interruption of the normal pattern.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start charting early on, the goal is to identify a pattern. Mm-hmm. And the goal when you switch to a new method is to go, okay, so within these parameters, with this method, with these biomarkers, now I have to find my pattern again. And I would agree, it's probably not the best time to want to both learn and apply a new method when you're already struggling to find that pattern. And it's normal to be struggling to identify that pattern. But that's right. Why, still what we're tracking with these methods, it's very objective.
Mm-hmm.
So meeting with a practitioner probably a little bit more during this time, I would say is gonna happen.
You're right. You're gonna have a
little bit more advice about how to make decisions with the data. But yeah, I kind of would say stay the course. Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah. And that's not to say, let's say that you are perimenopause and you are making the decision at this time to learn a method of fertility awareness. That's phenomenal. And it is absolutely possible. Your instructors are trained to help you through this period of time. Please don't be, worried that, I'm getting up there in age. Like maybe I should just keep using hormonal birth control. No, please don't. It'd be great if you could ovulate a few more times before your body shuts it down. Like that'd be really good for your body. So, so if you're looking to learn a method for the first time in perimenopause, it is absolutely possible. And your instructor is going to help you a lot, probably simply because it is a variable time in your cycle. I think this would be the same if I was teaching a 12-year-old who just started cycling.
Exactly.
That's pretty hard.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Because there's a lot of variability in the first couple of years of cycling. And so it actually kind of, it bookends on either side.
No, absolutely. I bet those charts would look pretty similar.
Probably,
if you know the ages and you saw the chart, someone 49 and someone 12. It might be pretty similar.
I know. I'm curious.
It's a wild thought.
I want to see like a 12-year-old's chart and be like, oh, that looks like perimenopause.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. Okay. So anything else on like short-term goals?
I guess my final thought here is that it's okay to change your goals. People often will be like, my stated intention was X, but we're doing Y. Do I need to tell someone? Is this okay? Am I ruining the efficacy of this method by having changed my mind? But it's really, to make decisions on short-term goals, we're not often asked to do that, but it is okay in this realm.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. I don't know how many clients I've had come to us that have been like, we knew what we were doing and we're pregnant. And I'm like, that's fine. Like, great. That's fantastic. You don't need to tell me that your intentions changed. Like,
absolutely. Yeah.
Like, I'm going to keep checking your chart based on the last intention you told me. And I'll say, hey, that was, intercourse in the fertile period.
But did you know that at the time?
Yeah.
Would be the only question, Yeah.
And your instructor just wants to ensure that you know what you're doing.
Exactly. Yep.
You are allowed to have sex whenever you want with your husband. Like,
yeah,
that's okay. Your instructor is not your gatekeeper.
Exactly.
Oh man, that's a great place. I feel like that's a great place to end. Oh man. Ellen, do you have any other thoughts just on kind of discerning what the right method is for you?
I think really, I think we feel a very heavy responsibility to get it right. To get it right for ourselves, for our husband, to get it right for the family size we want to have. We feel often, you just said the word gatekeeper, but as though we are the gatekeeper for the fate of our entire family.
Yes.
And this decision feels so heavy. And I just want to encourage women that there is a reason why there are so many available, effective options in this area. It's because you are unique and unrepeatable. You're an individual, and these methods are all respecting and celebrating that. And if you need to make a switch, make a switch. If you just need some more help, if you want to know why an instruction exists, why we're doing something the way we're doing it, why your instructor is giving you a certain piece of advice, it's all your business. You have a right to know all of this. And, it's your body is telling you all of this information anyway. An instructor is just going to help you decode it.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that was wonderful. That's a great place to end. Ellen, thank you so much. I hope that this episode was helpful for those of you listening. Again, all of these questions, we're going to put them in the show notes. And then if you want a nice, pretty PDF that you can print out that has kind of some space for you to jot down some notes, send me an email. My email is also in the show notes. I would love to send that to you. And of course, at any time, if you have questions, reach out on Instagram, reach out on email, and we'll link Ellen's Instagram Ellen 2's Instagram in the show notes as well, if you want to reach out to her. Thank you so much, Ellen, for being here.
Thanks for having me. So much fun.